Hey guys, welcome to Be Better Podcast. This is Sam Mitchell. I'd love to have you speak more about yourself. This is going to be episode 43, believe it or not. So yeah, Sam, tell me about your story.
All right, so I run a podcast called Autism Rocks and Rolls. It's a podcast about autism and how we cope with daily struggles that you may or may not understand. Through the podcast, it's grown so much. I developed sponsors, a board of 6. I'm also an event planner in Indianapolis, where I'm from. I also do motivational speaking services. I've spoken in Oklahoma, Orlando 3 times, Canada twice, Stuart, Florida, and Washington, D.C. I just got done keynote speaking in Daniels, West Virginia last month.
Wow, that's impressive. How did it all start? What made you want to start a podcast?
Well, it started after I joined my high school's media club, and I fell in love with it so much that I decided I was going to start my own podcast. And if I had to get the equipment, so be it. Luckily, my parents were supportive enough to get me the equipment, and that was when Autism Rocks and Rolls was born.
Wow, wow. I mean, you must have some really supportive parents. Um, did they have any type of um, thoughts of where this could go, like where it is now?
We thought it was initially be a hobby, but there were other people who started to reach out to us and want to make it grow.
Yeah.
Our board president and vice president were the ones who said, let's try to see where this can go. And we had to have a family meeting about it, and we decided to see where it went. And luckily, it's definitely went somewhere, if I say myself.
Yeah, I mean, you have a pretty impressive following, and I mean, those speaks. I mean, did I see that you're on TEDx?
I was a TEDx speaker.
Yes.
I've had the privilege of doing a TEDx talk called Soul Structure. It's about why those on the spectrum need structure. We had to do it virtual because of COVID, but still qualified as a TEDx talk.
That's impressive, man. That's awesome. That's a big accomplishment. I mean, a lot of people can't say that. Did you have any podcasters that you looked up to get you to where you're at now?
Well, I like to think I did it on my own, really. I
Yeah.
mean, you got the basic ones that you like, Joe Rogan and all of them, but I try to make this into my own. I try to make it separate from the competition out there than the other autism podcasts.
So that brings up my next point. What separates you from other podcasts?
Well, I think it's coming from someone with autism. I think most of the doctors out there is what it is. It's autism podcasts about doctors. They tell you facts. 1 in 34 people are diagnosed with autism. That's a great start, but whoop-de-doo. In my opinion, I talk about the emotional side of autism and the reason why in my brain why we do what we do. A doctor's not going to tell you that.
Right. They don't have that personal touch. They just have textbooks and what they read. What are some things that you found struggle with autism?
Well, I have crippling anxiety as one. I have foot and mouth syndrome, as I like to call it. I would say I don't do plan Bs well. I have a hard time compromising. Socializing is hard in conversations and non-speaking communication. So the eye rolls, facial expressions, body language is very hard for me to understand. I'm not the most patient person alive. I do have some anger issues. And I would also say I have sensory feeling. So it's different for everybody on the spectrum. It could be texture or taste. It could be a smell. Mine is clothing. I don't like my t-shirt being wet. That's too much of a sensory issue where it's not gonna be surviving with me. I'll be dead in a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the sensory. My daughter, she has a little bit of sensory issue. She it's very particular about things like wetness is one of them, temperature, and if she had any of those happening at that moment of time, she has a total, I don't want to say freak out, but I mean essentially it is. We have to do everything in our power to make sure to stop whatever that's happening, whether it's turning it hot to cold or whatever the case is. It's just it's pretty sad that something like that can occur. It sounds troubling. I know some
I
of the
know. I hate it too because there's a certain smell I don't like, and it's literally the smell of, in my view, someone vomits and they don't clean it up. Great example.
yeah.
When in my school's bathroom I went to, they had 2 bathrooms. One
Mm.
of them smelled great, but the other, holy crap, that was awful. It smelled like someone literally vomited and no one cleaned it up.
I
And
yeah.
my best friend the whole entire time was like, "Your stuff full of crap. It don't stink that bad." And I kept telling him, "Oh, really? Go in there." He wouldn't do it. He chickened out. Finally, I think we went back to our school for a dance marathon. This is after we graduated.
Mhm.
I think he had to go in the bathroom to wash his hands. He came out and was like, "Hey, Sam, you were right." I was like, "Yeah, no wonder. I told you. It smells like someone vomited and no one cleaned it up."
Oh yeah. So I'm a nurse, and vomiting is probably one of the issues that I don't like. It's because it's so acidic, and for some reason, it just I don't do well. I don't throw up or anything.
Yeah.
It's one thing I can't tolerate. Now,
There's
pus,
another smell in the Bloomington bathroom in the Bloomington restaurant we have close by.
yeah,
I can't go in there. It has that exact same smell.
mm, that's rough. So I know some of the things that we've helped my daughter is we take her to a therapist to help either get used to or just kind of get neutralized to it. Is that something have you done in the past or present?
Counseling I have done, but as I've gotten older, it doesn't help for me. I think it's just because I'm too hard headed is part of it.
Okay.
But two, I think I know myself well enough to figure out, okay, here's what I need to do.
Hmm.
No one else can tell me what to do because this is what I need to do. I'm not saying like I'm the boss. I do what I want. It's just that at some points I need to put my foot down and say, this is what I have to do. If you get in my way, I will metaphorically push you out of the way.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. I mean, that's a good thing you have, ways to deal with things. What are some things that inspired you to keep pushing to I'm assuming your podcast wasn't, um, where it was it as now. What made you keep going to get to that point?
I think it's just the fact that I'm helping people. And that's what this whole idea when I started this podcast was, is I can help people. I can tell stories that you had to be there to understand, or you would think it's ridiculous because if I said it out loud, it might be like, it doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
But with autism in particular, it's hidden. You don't know they have it unless they tell you.
Yeah.
There's been people who listen to my show and they're nodding, like, yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. Because in their brain, someone actually gets it. Whereas they've interacted with people who are like, what the heck's wrong with this guy?
How do you deal with people with no tolerance?
Oh, I just try to stay away from them. I
Yeah.
try to keep myself around people who actually like me.
Yeah. I mean, that's good. I always thought that, if someone doesn't like me, I try to explain to them, like, and I don't want to say like, I just tell them my point of view, like, hey, like, this is me, I'm just kind of being goofy and whatnot, or hey, I'm just kind of relaxing, or, maybe we shouldn't, jump to conclusions and stuff like that. Just have a conversation with them, just see where that goes. But if not, then, well, there's always the next person, right?
That's where you may not see, that's where you and I may not see eye to eye a little bit.
Really?
Because I don't people please, and I just don't, pardon the French, but give a shit at
Mm.
what you think of me.
Yeah,
Like, you don't like me? I'm not explaining myself to you. I'm going on to the next person.
that's a great quality, man. It's something that can be troubling, right? Because it's just hard. So that's awesome. Pat on your back.
Yeah,
Awesome.
do I? Thank you. Now, have I made some enemies probably having that trait? Sure. But here's my ordeal. People pleasing led me to stress and anxiety from my personal standpoint.
Mm.
Being the other person who just doesn't care has made me not the most popular guy alive. And
Yeah,
if I had to pick between which battle to go to war with, I wanted the battle with making some enemies over self-destruct.
yeah. That's awesome, man. That's you're being your true self. You're being very genuine with the person. If they don't like it, they don't like it. And if not, then oh well. That's awesome, man. What
Yeah.
so kind of going back to that storytelling, how do you think that plays in a role with your audience?
Well, I think it plays a role because I think a lot of people on the spectrum try to be people pleasers, and what I'm trying to show them too is it doesn't get them anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you even build their confidence up?
Well, I tell the truth, obviously,
Mhm.
but I try to also tell them that someone's going to find you interesting. Did I make some enemies? Probably, sure. But have I made some friends and some great connections with my podcast and personal connections that have nothing to do with my podcast? Yes.
Wow. And then I know you kind of said you kind of started the podcast back in high school, but what were like some key factors to in school that like what type of um, tools and traits did you use to get that going? Like, did you learn Adobe or stuff? Like, what was the? How, tell me more about that.
In the media club, I learned Audacity.
Yeah.
Now, I'm in broadcasting, and in media club, we hit the video a little bit. But
Hmm.
with video, I was overwhelmed, and I didn't want to do with it. So I just did the audio. And I'm great at audio, but video is still a little shaky. But I think I have to master video because I'm taking video classes this semester. And if I'm going to graduate college, I don't have a choice but to take them.
Yeah. What and what's your degree in college or what are you studying for? Is it
Broadcasting.
broadcasting? Okay, very cool. Now, podcast broadcasting. Are you thinking about sticking to more online, or are you thinking about actually going to like a radio station broadcasting, or even starting something on your own? Or
Possibly something on my own. Maybe internet
yeah,
radio station. I'm happy with whatever. I'm wearing my shirt, actually. If I can move my lanyard out of the way.
yeah.
This is the internship my bad. The radio station I internshipped at, WQRK 105.5, Southern Indiana's Classic Hits. It's a radio station up in Bedford, and they play all your classics, I think 70s and 80s music.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. I know Nate's a pretty big fan of that genre. I'm actually, I think more of the '80s. I think it's an '80s. My daughter loves the vibe to that I think disco music. I would say uh, loves to dance to it. So very very good times. Um,
Let's just say because we're in Indiana, there's a lot of John Mellencamp playing in that realm.
I'm not familiar with him. I'm probably
John
new to
Cougar
it.
Mellencamp.
Yeah, I'm not familiar.
Oh, if you heard his songs, you'd probably know it.
Probably. Yeah, I'm not really good with names. I've never been. What got you into the internship? How'd that start?
So I had to look for an internship to complete college, and the options were finding a radio station or live in Vincennes over the summer. I didn't want to live in Vincennes over the summer. I wanted to have a summer break.
Mhm.
And I say summer break. I really didn't have a break. I worked, but I still want to be close to home, not to deal with school and just be
Mhm.
away from it for a while to get a good break. But through the searching around here, I was able to visit Bedford radio station for an Autism Rocks and Rolls gala. We were on their show called Talk of the Town, and I contacted the person who was in charge, and basically she literally put me on the spot and interviewed me when I had no expectations.
Mhm.
But I handled it myself well, I guess, because I got the place.
And how long was the internship?
I
The
did
summer?
it through summer break, so June, July, then maybe a little bit of August.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounded like you had a good time, right?
Oh, I had a great time. I became friends with the radio DJ there, so worked out for me.
So, what are some lessons you got from there?
I think I learned how to use Adobe better
Yeah. Okay.
because in my school we were using Adobe Audition and Adobe Premiere Pro, and we still are. So I think I learned how to use it better there
You want to tell
compared
the
to
audience?
first year.
Yeah, well, that's good. You want to tell the audience like some of the things that you had grown with that program? Just some things that they could be struggling with that you think it might be a little better. Just a little quick bit.
Well, I can try. I think what I always had a hard time doing was crossfading. It's
Yeah.
where you put two tracks together. And I could just never master it because I'd always be like, and then the fade would be too sudden.
Yeah.
or too late. I finally was able to like match it for the right time. And what I didn't know is radio and broadcasting and video, there's a lot of timing involved. People don't see that.
Yeah, some because I do a lot of the stuff behind the scenes with the Better podcast, and I'm actually kind of starting to dabble into that stuff as well. And I haven't gotten to Adobe, but some options that I've done is kind of started with fading, but especially with like music and just transition to scenes. I also find that timing is very important, and it does make a huge difference into your um, I don't want to say slideshow, but your show. So I know that you've had a really successful podcast. So why don't you tell the audience some of the main people or some key members of, not members, but um, guests that you had on your show?
Okay. Well, I've had Mick Foley on the show. I've had Kane on, Jake the Snake, Roberts from wrestling. That was pretty fun. I've had America's Got Talent contestants such as Mandy Harvey and Amanda Mama Anna, along with Ben Waits. I've had American Idol contestants such as James Durbin. I've had the biggest autism advocate out there, Temple Grandin, on the show. And then, before I forget, I've had one of your previous guests on the show, Kaden McElwin.
Yeah, man, he's awesome. I actually just talked to Caden maybe a few weeks, maybe longer than that actually, about our we got with we got in touch with the Boatman style shoes. If you haven't heard of them, great set of shoes. But yeah, he got us connected and got him on the podcast, and it was a great time. And Caden's just a very, very driven person, and I applaud him through all his challenges. And I mean, he's just
Oh,
phenomenal.
I know. He said I'm his idol, apparently, so go figure.
I mean, yeah, you're kind of my idol right now, man. You got a lot of
Thanks.
you're very, very great and successful at what you've been doing, and I'm sure it's no easy task. So I definitely, again, give you another applause. Um, from those guests, what are some key things that stood out? What are some stories that you think that changed your life for the better?
Well, I think a lot of these stories remind me of how lucky I am. A great example, Jake the Snake. Oh my gosh. Where do you begin with this guy? And he'll probably not mind me sharing this because he's shared it before. Two grandchildren with autism and cerebral palsy, drug and alcohol abuse. His dad beat the crap out of him as a child.
Hmm.
Mom sexually assaulted him. And he currently has COPD.
Wow, that's a lot.
And I'm thinking, my gosh, that's a lot to balance. And I don't mind balancing some stuff, but that many, it's like, I'm hate to say this, but I'm kind of happy I don't have to work with that.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like a lot of balls to bounce and to juggle. And not only that's not only him, but other people too that he has to be, you know, helpful about. So with that being said, like, what do you think? How do you think, other than how grateful you are, is there anything else that you learned from it?
I think what I learned from others is I'm not the only one in this boat. You have people with these big platforms like Mick Foley, who has a son with autism, and yet I have my father on the show who has a son with autism. It reminds me there are other fathers out there who are going through what I've been going through, or I've had autism advocates. I'm not the only one who probably can't socialize the best. Kane McElwin, he's admitted on the show, his social skills stink. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that. Mine do too.
Yeah. So with your podcast, what point of the time did you realize that, wow, this is successful? Like, what part?
Probably the minute I got invited to speak in Oklahoma, I was like, okay, you were inviting me outside of Indiana. What's going on here?
Yeah. How did that even come out? Like, how did they reach out? Like, what was
Yeah, they reached
what's
out
up?
and somehow found me on social media.
Wow, I bet you were just ecstatic. How I did you? Was that the one where you said they couldn't bring you in, they had to videotape you, or was that a different one?
That's a different one. I had none of the videotaping, but I'd done some virtual ones, but videotaping was the TEDx talk.
How was the how do you, I don't want to say train, but how do you prepare for those speeches?
Well, I'll try to align it with the topic.
Yeah.
So, for example, this one we did, it was aimed towards the keynote one. It was aimed towards caregivers and parents with individuals with probably extremely severe autism, as they say. I think it's just mindset of 3-year-olds. So we had to change our presentation, comparing it to the one at Podfest, which is one in Orlando, and talked about podcasting and autism. And we can't get the same speech because they're different topics. We
Right.
just fix out this layout a little bit is all we do.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. Do you have any upcoming or future um, talks?
There might be one, and it's not confirmed yet. We're still working out the kinks on it. But I might be going to Columbus, Ohio to talk to HR employees to show them you should hire people with autism.
Okay. Is that something you think you might transition to, or at least combined, kind of like either motivation speaker or inspirational speaker at some point of your life?
Yeah, I kind of have already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like full time. I mean, this is probably. I mean,
I mean, I might. It just depends on where we go. I mean, I'm gonna get a job in the future.
yeah.
We'll see
But
what happens, man.
yeah. Do you like it though? I mean, is it kind
Of
of like,
course,
yeah?
of course, I have fun. I'm traveling, seeing the world. Can't go wrong with that.
No, you can't. I get nervous speaking to large crowds. You know, 101, I do fine at. Anything more than like five, I get nervous. I just sometimes if I have to, right? If I have like a little not a board meeting, but like a meeting before work, I'll have to like tell my mantra in the bathroom to get me like in that mindset. Do you have any like mantras or any type of um I don't know, something like that that you do to kind of calm yourself down?
Well, I listen to music before the speeches. Always try to do that. It's my way of keeping my sanity. And I always just think, too, when I speak, if I get booed, I get booed. I really don't care. This is for my benefit,
Hmm.
not yours. If you don't like it, that's a you problem, not a me problem.
Yeah. Wow, that's really good advice. I always like to, you know, give eye direct to the people. I like to um I don't know if I what are some other things. Um hmm, I don't know. I can't think of much. I don't really give much, but here like the podcast, you know, I just feel like that the um it's just it flows easier, you know, with one on one. But yeah. What are other things you want to do with the podcast in the future?
Well, I'm trying to think of what else here. There's some stuff that I can think of that are coming up down the pipe. I might be a vendor because one of the things I like to do too, and this is my favorite thing to do. We don't do it as much as I want to, but I like to be a vendor because it's word of mouth and setting up booths at trade shows. We did one, I think, last summer at a family fun fair in Indiana. And then this year, there's the Square Circle Expo. It's probably one of the biggest professional wrestling, trying to think of the word here, events out there. And I decided last year to be a vendor to swing that for the fences to see if I'd be a good fit because of the wrestlers I've had on my show. And it turned out I was a great fit.
That's awesome. Are you a huge fan of wrestling, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah, I'm a huge fan of wrestling.
So yeah, I haven't. I used to be really big into the wrestling back when like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and let's see, I think Booker T, the Triple H, that era. I haven't gotten to it this I guess era, but um, I haven't really focused on it due to the fact I got a family and you know work. It just kind of pulled me back a little bit. So
Well, you enjoyed wrestling at the best time when wrestling was going on, so you're good.
yeah, yeah. So is it a lot different now, or like what's?
Oh, it's a lot different. They're more focused on the wrestling than the storylines.
Yeah, back then it was just It was awesome. I don't know if it was just because I was younger or what was the deal, but it was
No, you're not. It was just cool back then. I
was
watched it a little bit back then when I had the network to see what it was like in the 90s and the thousands. Much better.
yeah, it was really good. Um, let's see what else. The anything like what education, if for the standard listener out there, what education would you provide for them to be more aware with autism?
Well, I can tell you this here coming up down the pipe, we'll be having Autism Rocks and Rolls educational modules to help out parents for their newly diagnosed life and their child if they receive an autism diagnosis. We want to show parents that this autism diagnosis is not to be dreaded news.
Yeah. So speaking about parents and with autism kids or autistic kids, how would you tell them to like what's one of the number one things they ask you?
Well, I think what they're most of is scared.
Yeah.
My mom was scared for 2 freaking days. She went to bed for 2 days because she thought her life was over. But I know you don't get to choose your child having autism. But my thing is, you got to toughen it up. You decide to be a parent no matter what.
Amen. Amen.
Don't don't give up on a child. You don't do that. And plus, here's my thing. What did the child do to make you give up on him? You're gonna give up because of something that he didn't do? Seriously?
Yeah. I think when people are scared, they want to run
The
away.
child didn't give himself autism.
Right? Yeah. That's just not right. It's not fair. I think that, with them being scared and all, and I don't happen, I'm not in that boat. So, but regardless, if anything did pop up, whether it was some disease, I would never, abandon my child because I think the number one parent is support and love unconditionally because they're so innocent and they can't, you know, it's not their choice, like you said. It's no
And
one's.
even though those on the spectrum struggle, they're really good people. The majority of people with autism are nice people.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, I feel like, not to say that non-autistic people aren't cool, but like I think autism kids are not just kids, but in general are simply amazing because they are very blunt. They're very happy and they're just, you know, bring this vibe, this aura that makes everything just, I don't know, just much better. Have you witnessed something like that as well? Or,
I mean, I'm in a program up in my college where there's full of children, young adults, I should say,
Mhm.
with disabilities. And I'm not talking about autism, I'm talking OCD, epilepsy, ADHD, learning disabilities. And I'll tell you this, the ones with autism, they make my day brighter. A couple of them are my really good friends. Just seeing them every day makes my day a little happier.
That's awesome. Um, you kind of mentioned the group. Is there any groups that you want to, I guess, resources in general for anyone who wants to learn more about this?
I would say you need to do online yourself. Avoid really the big ones because I think sometimes those are just government finances who are looking to get a paycheck. Do your research on those because unfortunately, as much as I believe money and mental health should not be in the same sentence, it is.
Okay. And so, I mean, so steer clear from the big ones, but what is there any specific ones that you think would be better to get more information?
I think researching Temple Grandin's pretty good because she knows her information and the history of it too. I would say maybe try to look at smaller ones. I'm not going to say avoid experts because that's a good start,
Yeah.
but don't just go right on the experts. Maybe the information they say is not all the way true.
Yeah.
To a point, it could be, but not all the way.
So, have you had any like in your experience any misconceptions people have autism or how they address them?
Well, I just got asked this earlier today, and it's the same one. I'm still dealing with it to this day. Autism spectrum disorder, people forget it's a spectrum. They think of what population of autism. Excuse me. And that is the mindset of 3 year olds who can't go to the bathroom on their own. They can't brush their teeth on their own. That is a part of autism. It's a population. And maybe the wheelchair bound too.
Hmm.
But that's not all of them. There's some who have the mindset of 8 year olds who understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
maybe if you try to get them a job, it's gonna be an accident waiting to happen. But then there's me, who might biologically be 22, but realistically have the mindset of a 19 or 20-year old.
Man, I guess I don't know how people would handle that. I mean, especially like not knowing that they had it and then they have it and then you have to deal with it. It just seems like, a shock. And, in order to find resources, do you think the government is helping or gives the proper resources for parents?
Mental health pretty much everywhere is a joke, so no.
Yeah. What do you think that could be helpful? Like, have you thought about any resources?
I think we have some, which is great, but we don't have enough.
Yeah.
And there's some resources out there that we have to play good cop or bad cop. And when I say good cop or bad cop, they're not in it for the help, they're in it for the money.
Yeah.
And if you're in a mental health field, BS on the money. You should not be in the mental health field for it. You need to be there to help the person with autism or the client.
Yeah. I wonder what type of programs that we can try to help form to meet those, you know, gaps that the government's not really able to provide. Have you thought about starting some type of like government or legislative to your senate or anything like that?
No, because honestly, if I spoke to the government, I get way too blunt.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what they need though, right?
Yeah, yeah, you want to. I'm sure Donald Trump wants to hear me call him an idiot.
Yeah.
But I know people who've done it before. We met someone at that Virginia conference who is, and this is impressive, has Down syndrome, has spoken to, I think, legislators on why you getting rid of Special Olympics.
Man, that's
And I'm like, gosh, you got more balls than I do.
yeah, I mean that takes some serious cajones. Good for them. That's good for them. So I guess we're heading towards the end of this podcast. Is there anything that you'd like to shine on? Anything that you want to, talk about with your podcast or the future?
Well, I think this is just life of words and not really words of wisdom, but the truth of life. If the world could be nice and not act so stupid, I think we get along so much better, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think coming together would fix a lot of problems.
I'm with you there, man. I mean, when you are divided, nothing gets done.
No, it
When
just
you're working together, it gets done.
yeah, I mean it just prevents clashes and just those it just doesn't go nowhere. I mean, I feel like that's what we've been doing this entire time. I mean, we have made some strides, right? We have came closer at times, but then we also got farther apart at times, even more than before. So, all we can do is pray and do our best, talk clearly, talk um, bluntly, So I think that's something that could be helped to help bring us together. But, you know, I think that would be a good start. Do you want to shout out your podcast and all the other foundations?
Well, you can find me on my website, autismrockswills.com. Everything's on there, and I'm not a hard person to find. If you Google me in your search engine optimization, something will pop up.
Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, guys. Well, this is the end of the podcast. And, like we say, be better. And hopefully we could figure out to help other people in the future. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.